to our third Inclusivity Community of Practice meeting for the year. This month, we are in the lead up to the International Day of Peace. And as part of that, we want to focus on advancing the inclusion of children in peace-building efforts. So today, we are joined in an intergenerational panel where we'll get to hear from those working with children in peace building. So just a couple of ground rules that I'll put because of the sensitive nature of this conversation today. So if everyone could, if you have questions, you can put it in the Q&A in the chat and we'll have a Q&A session. But please don't ask any personal questions to our panelists, such as, where they're living, where they go to school. But also make sure that if you would like to follow up with any of our panelists following the meeting, you can send me an email and we can try to make those connections. But other than that, we're looking forward to a really great discussion today. So we will start off with our panel, and then we will follow with a Q&A, and then have breakout rooms where we will hear from all of you. So very excited to spend today with you. So enough from me. I'm going to pass it on to our very capable moderator, Jessica, who is a member of the Sikh Council of Africa, where she's going to now lead us in our discussion.
Thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. It is so amazing to see all of you today. My name is Jaskiran, a child representative of Arigato International. I was part of the Children's Advisory Group at the GNRC 6th Forum held in UAE in November 2024. Being a student, I hope to pursue a career in the medical field and in diplomacy as well. So I really look forward to such sessions in the future as well. So today's panel discussion is going to be about global engagement and opportunities in advancing children's leadership and intergenerational collaboration. And personally, having been part of a lot of international conferences, I truly do understand the values and input that young children bring aboard in their understanding of world problems. When encouraging youth leadership, it ensures that decisions consider both present needs and future impacts, leading to sustainable development amongst communities, which also promotes inclusivity. So I will quickly introduce the panelists for this session. So first of all, we'll have Mr. Salim Charles, founder and executive director, Reimagining New Communities. He is a peace building and community development professional with over 7 years of experience in development communication and film production. Next, we'll have Ishfa Luna, a child representative of Arigato International Comoros, who is also a member of the Children's Division of the Peace Council Association. And last, but certainly not the least, we will have Vanessa Wyatt, the global lead in conflict prevention, fragility, and peace building, UNICEF. So we'll dive right into the discussion. So we'll start with the first question directed to Mr. Salim. What would you think are the primary obstacles to advancing the inclusion of children in peace building efforts?
Thank you so much, Jaskarin, and thank you to Peacemakers Network for organizing such an important discussion, and welcome everyone. So I'll start by saying involvement of children in peace building is not charity, but justice. And that is one of the obstacles when we look at it, that we are helping children, and children are not active players in these processes. And so every time we view it as a charity and not as a fundamental right for children to be involved, so we are creating the basis of so many obstacles that come up with. But also the other thing that keeps on, making children not be actively involved in these peace building processes is also undermining the voice of children and not looking at it as not respecting their wisdom and their experiences, where children are not valued or their experiences are not valued as a human right issue. And it's just something else, like, it's just a child speaking, but not as a human being speaking. And that is a huge obstacle to, to involving children. But again, other underlining obstacles, of course, is also in terms of geographical and even location, and in terms of where the child or the children are coming from. And because when you look at children from low-income communities, where especially we work in as re-emerging new communities, you find that will children be thinking about even just getting food, or be thinking of this kind of processes. So hunger is the third obstacle that I look at, because most of children are struggling to get meals. There are children who don't have three meals a day, and so just thinking about where they'll get their food is too much for them. And so they might not be able to be involved in this kind of processes. And their family not being able to provide is also critical. And it's an obstacle in that sense. And then lastly, I look at access to information, which is very key. Most of children who are even in conflict zones, and in low-income communities don't have access to information. And they will depend on adults or caregivers or teachers. And sometimes even when these teachers and caregivers are not informed on different processes, or even informed on governance or global issues, then you'll find that these children are not in a position that they can be able to contribute to this kind of conversation. So I look at all those, the four issues as the basis and the main obstacles, according to me, as in terms of the work that I've been doing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful insight on the problems that children face. I just have one more question. When you have been part of the community engagement, community development, how impactful would you say that the children's voices are in such situations, or to what extent can they bring a change to solving problems in today's world?
Great. And that's a very good question. So you don't realize how powerful children's voices are until you engage them. And like I started by saying, everything that we do, be peace building, be any other program in any sector, we should not look at children and as beneficiaries, but as partners. And in our work, we look at children as partners in terms of peace building and active partners per se. And so one of the things that we have seen, children, when there is that urgency of voice, when you involve children in these processes, then there is that sense of ownership of community, because when you work with adults, they are thinking about family, they're thinking about income, they're thinking about other so many things. But when you work with children, there is that sense of ownership, because now they are growing up knowing that, oh, this is my community and this is what I'm required to do. And so there is that sense of citizenship that you're instilling in them. And they are coming up as individuals and as citizens who understand their rights, who understand their responsibilities. And so it becomes a very important stage in their lives, but also an important development. Also, when you look at sustainable development goals, and particularly when you talk about education, partnership, and all those kind of things, when kids are partners in achievement of a sustainable development goal, or even in terms of policies that we come up with, there is that transfer of information and impact, because children will share information with their families in schools and all that. And children, and even by nature, they share it innocently and so authentic. as an adult, sometimes you'll filter information when you want to share. But when you train and support children to be in this kind of processes, you'll find that there is kind of authentic, sharing of information in communities and contributors in terms of peaceful societies. And so it's very critical for them to be involved at an early stage, but also you see them being able to carry on and peace build, because most of the time we say, oh, children have their own ambitions and all these kind of things. For example, peace building and children engaging in peace building, they don't have to be, do peace building. They need to be able to understand, if I'm going to study medicine, if I'm going to study this, how can I use the values that have been instilled in me through the peace building processes into my workplace, into the kind of career I want to pursue. So it's not necessarily they have to become peace builders, but understanding that in every field that they go to, then they're able to promote and cultivate and nurture those values in those kind of places. And so that's the importance of involving children as partners in this process. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. It was very motivational. It was an incredible insight. Next, we'll have Ishfa Luna. She will be providing us with her insight on peace building. I think you're muted.
For me, peace is a universal value that goes beyond the absence of war. It means justice, respect, and solidarity. It starts with small action and sharing instead of excluding. These daily steps build trust and unity. But true peace needs justice, inequality, and discrimination make it fragile. To build peace, we must promote fairness, dignity, human rights. Peace is everyone's responsibility. By acting together, we can create a future of harmony, safety, and hope. Peace is not just a dream, it begins today with us. That's
Um,
okay for me.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. I think the key message that we have gotten from that is that everyone is involved in peace building. The adults play as much as a role in peace building as much as us children, the youth do. So thank you so much for that, Ishfa. And finally, we'll be having our last speaker, Miss Vanessa. So we have listened to the problems highlighted by Mr. Salim. So we are kind of looking for some solutions. So what would you say are the practical things that international advocates should be aware of when they're advocating for children's rights?
Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me to participate and giving me the opportunity to join this discussion. And thank you to the other speakers for offering their insights. I think I would just start by saying, the thing that we as UNICEF keep trying to emphasize is that the foundations for peace and stability start in childhood. There's a very strong body of literature that shows that investing in children from a very, very early age strengthens social cohesion, helps break intergenerational cycles of violence, helps promote inclusivity, empathy, compassion, cooperation, and really important, human skills that are necessary for societies to function and thrive. We also know that, we understand conflict as being, driven by grievances, created by structural forms of exclusion and inequality that over time can be mobilized by political actors to incite violence. And so if we look at the problem of exclusion and structural forms of exclusion as being at the root of conflict, then obviously the solution to that has to lie in looking for ways to dismantle those systems of exclusion and promote more inclusion and equity in places where there has been systematic discrimination or marginalization, and that has to start with children. We also know that senses of identity and belonging and group identity and, you know, who I am and who other people are and where I belong in society start and are formed at a very, very young age. And so children are looking for ways to categorize the world and understand their place in it. And so if we do not start by including children in the process of building more inclusive and peaceful societies, we can't actually succeed in those efforts. Um, and so I really liked what our first colleague said, that involvement of children is not charity, it's justice. It's also extremely necessary for us to actually succeed in what it is that we say we want to do. And so I think the most important point I think we've learned is that supporting and including children in peace building efforts starts with meeting them where they are and recognizing the societal context in which they're growing up, which means that, you know, it's, you know, children are not powerful, independent actors in society. They live in families, they have caregivers, they interact with institutions, particularly schools. And if we don't understand the impact that those institutions and structures have on their lives and look for ways to emphasize inclusion through all of that, then we're doing them a disservice by only focusing on one barrier, for example. And then the other thing that I really liked what our colleague said that emphasized is that, you know, the costs of not doing this are really high. You know, toxic stress and malnutrition in childhood are linked with depression and anxiety. Children who experience violence and often are exposed to, you know, intergenerational cycles of trauma. Children are paying the price of conflict. The children are bearing the brunt of increasing violence and conflict. And what we see right now is a total disregard for child rights. And so it is essential that we look for ways to involve children and give them voice. The other thing I would like to say is children are incredibly wise and creative. They see things and understand things about their communities that we may not always see. They have insights that, if we listen to, can give us incredible ideas about how to solve problems in communities. And so some of what we as UNICEF have focused on are looking at kind of the vast range of skills that are necessary for building peace. We have for example, an adolescence as peace builders toolkit, which kind of focuses on ages 10 to 17, so more or less, of looking at all of the different skills and tools that you need to actually participate and build peace, which, you know, things like, you know, problem solving, managing conflict, cooperation, teamwork, empathy, respect, hope for the future, coping with stress. So there's a lot of really important skills and competencies that children already have, and that can be strengthened to help include them in building peace and in engaging in their societies. I think I could speak to more specific questions, but I think one of the most important things to recognize is they are also um, rights holders. They possess human rights. Child rights are incredibly important. They are distinct from the rights of adults. They require protection, and that's a non-negotiable. You know, that's not something that we can pick and choose as we want. That this is a fundamental. It has to be fundamental to everything that we do when it comes to trying to build peace and working with children to do that. And so if we don't start from recognizing the right of every single child in the world to live in peace and to live in a society where they're included and where their voice matters, then we can't negotiate any of those away. They're non-negotiable. And so I think in a world right now where we see a strong pushback on human rights of all kind, and particularly on child rights, it is really important that we stick to that principle as kind of the most fundamental starting point of everything that we do. So I'll stop my points there, but thank you.
Okay. That was actually very amazing. Actually, you are an advocate for conflict prevention and peace building. And so I had a question. So in the future, how would you suggest that we prevent conflicts from affecting children? How would you say that, how can we address these challenges for protecting the children in the future? As yes, we are promoting safety and security, but at the same time, we are also kind of increasing the risks with the conflicts going on. How would you say maybe the specific ways on how we could protect the future children as well?
Sorry, I lost my mute button for a minute. I think there, I mean, there are a lot of obviously fundamental obligations that we have as the international community has, that states have, and that institutions have, that are not necessarily being met, and that need to be met, including is safe learn, protecting access to healthcare, protecting access to education. Obviously, these are important. I think one of the things that we as UNICEF have learned and have increasingly focused on over the last several years is the importance of mental health and psychosocial support um, in peace building and to children affected by conflict, not just on the negative side in the sense that of the impact of conflict on children and the kind of toxic stress and trauma and what that does and how that disrupts a child's development um and their it puts them at a disadvantage, even if those sources of stress are removed instantly. The fact that they've experienced that has actually altered their brain functions in certain ways. But what we've also learned is that there are ways that we can support children that to promote healing and psychosocial support and mental health that are incredibly impactful and really benefit children and their communities and their parents and their caregivers. So that is one thing that we've learned about protecting children in conflict is ensuring that our efforts include a mental health component that really helps them cope with and manage and heal from the impact of conflict in their lives. In terms of like broader solutions for protecting children from conflict, I wish I had the answer right now. It's very disheartening to look around the world and see what's happening and realize that we are failing as adults in the world to protect our children. And so I think it's really important that we're starting this conversation with discussions of inclusion, because to me and to UNICEF, that's fundamentally the heart of this. If at the UN we say, for the sustainable development goals, it's leave no one behind, right? But I think what we sometimes don't ask is who is being left behind and why they are being left behind, and really understand some of those power structures and some of those the way the structural institutions work in societies, and cultural norms that are actually resulting in these unequal outcomes. And so start really interrogating that and starting with that as our departure point to really understand how to help protect and include children is incredibly important.
Thank you so much for that valuable input. I would like to direct one final question to Mr. Salim. When we talk about inclusivity, how do you think the social norms influence the role of children in peace building?
Um, Thank you for that question. So one of the things, and I'll talk from experience in terms of the work that we do, where we have find a lot of challenges, because in every communities, it's the challenges are context based. So it's not like it's the challenges universal, but they are context based. But one of the things that we have experienced is that there are ways that children are supposed to behave, or the kind of responsibility they have in certain communities. And for example, there are communities where children are not allowed to speak. And the parents will speak, or their caregivers will speak, and that will be the opinion of the entire family, for example. We also have others in terms of even religion, where children's voices or children's involvement is not, the management of the elders will plan and not even plan for children, not have children in those kind of meetings. So they'll plan for children without their voices. So and also when you talk about even context, you find that there are places where girls involvement is less than boys involvement, where they will tell you, boys are supposed to do this and girls are not supposed to do this. And so that limits inclusion. And I'll give you another example. We developing working on a FOB project, freedom of religion or belief, and it's in one of the counties in my country. And so one of the things that we were told by our host organization, community organization, is also if you are coming to speak to children about FOB, or the different groups, these are the things you need to be able to do. One, anyone who is coming should not wear, if it's a female, should not wear a trouser, should wear this kind of dress and stuff. And then two, they are not allowed to speak. So only male are allowed to speak and to say this is what they want to do, because you find that when they are male, in the conversation or in this kind of meetings, then and it's a female who is speaking and who seems to be younger than them, then they are not regarded. And so there is that kind of imbalances when it comes to the way you'll treat young kids, a female or male. But again, that general classification that children's voices and children involvement is not, those kind of cultural norms and cultural activity, but even in terms of the family setup. And so you'll find that when you want to involve children in this kind of conversations, then you have to be able to understand what are their culture, what is their tradition, what are the children allowed to do and not allowed to do in this kind of community. Because also when we do this work kind of ignorantly, without thinking about the current traditions in the communities, we come out as if we are disrespecting the tradition and the elders. So what is important is, as when you want to design inclusive spaces where children are involved, is you have to understand these barriers first. And then how do you navigate these barriers so that you can have children being involved? Because the involvement of children should, it has to be respectful of this kind, but also if these barriers and norms are negative, then we have to be able to confront them if we want to have peaceful society. So those are some of the things that kind of, um, affect social norms that affect children, inclusion, and inclusive peace building processes in communities.
Thank you so much for that. And actually, on that note, I would like to share a personal story as well. So in our local community, when we host several programs where we honor maybe the high achievers of our community, or if anytime we're organizing any local event, So when we have that committee organizing the whole event, we never used to initially have any youth present there. But trust you me, when the moment when we included more youth, more of the younger children to be part of that organizing process, all the events just transformed, and it which highlighted the impact of inclusivity. Whenever you're hosting anything, whenever working together, the intergenerational approach is really important when we have more youth involved in decision making. So thank you so much for that. I really thank all the panelists today for providing their valuable input, for their valuable insights to this discussion today. And I think I will now open the floor to any questions. Are there any questions from the floor, or I think I can maybe pass it to Jessica then. Thank you so much for providing me this opportunity to be the moderator of this session. I really thank all the attendees today for listening to this session. So over to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and amazing moderation discussion. And we're not done. If anybody wants to, if any of our panelists wants to come in and add anything else, or if we want to hear a question, you can put your question for our panelists and moderator in the chat, or you can raise your virtual hand. Yes, Isa.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for convening today's call. And really, thank you to all the panelists. It's amazing listening to you. So, my question is that we are starting a program next month to work primarily with young children between 11, 14, 17. And this is a program that we are still developing. We've not implemented a program of that nature. And so this conversation is very relevant to that. I'm going to open it up and ask the panelists, what would be your one important either caution or insights or recommendation or something you tell me that I can implement as a practical step in this program as I started in October. And just to add a little bit of context, we are going to bring children from rural communities, children of diverse economic backgrounds and social backgrounds, bringing them together in the same classroom, 100 of them, to engage with them using football and also classroom-based facilitation. So I want to hear from you and your insights on practical steps that I should take notice of as one of the program coordinators for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa. Really good question. Would any of our panelists like to, or moderator like to respond about some lessons learned of things he should keep in mind?
Yes, Jessica. Thank you, Isa, for that question. I'll like to ask you a question. Are the children involved in the design of this program?
Very little. Very little involvement of children. We have spoken to them just to get potential areas that they are interested in. But in terms of the design process, you know how these things can be a little bit bureaucratic. And unfortunately, I admit the fact that we assume that they're so technical, right? But of course, very little engagement of children in the design program. Yeah.
Great. Because then my advice would be that kind of involvement of children in terms of just getting to understand what exactly is important to them. Because, you know, most of the time, like I've shared, is we'll design programs and think that these programs are important to certain group or the community or children. but in actual sense, you find that, you know, it does not kind of probably connect to the local realities or even the values and on the children's own priorities. So maybe this is one area that you might want to revisit because you want sustainability of the program and children, because being involved and not just, you remember, not just as beneficiaries, but as partners, as implementers. And also just being them understanding what is the roadmap, what are the practical outcomes that they want to, you know, you want this kind of project to achieve. That will be what, you know, I advise. So placing children at the center of the program design, and, you know, that because it ensures that there is relevance, but also strengthens ownership and ensure that the activities, you know, they are meaningful and transformative for children, and they're just not any other, but there is that impact that is left, you know, in their lives even after the program is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. And I know Vanessa wanted to come in.
I did, though. I honestly, Salim really captured it well, but I would say two pieces of advice. First, to really take an intersectional approach to inclusion, right? So you said urban, rural, different economic backgrounds. I would say boys and girls, inclusion of children with disabilities wherever possible. Really looking at all of the different you know, identities that children have, and obviously different, you know, ethnic or religious groups, et cetera, is always very important, and really finding ways to ensure that you understand that kind of ecosystem, and that you're reflecting that in the design of your program. And then the second thing is really, if we're talking about inclusion, like inclusion as the central value, then including children as in co-creation in some way of the program itself. And so obviously, you know, it's not always possible to start with a blank slate and say, okay, let's get together and come up with an idea for a program. But there are always steps within the design of a program where it's possible to actually, where there are choices being made about how resources are being allocated, or what activities are going to be done, or how those activities are going to be carried out, where you have the opportunity to include children as part of that design, and saying, what do you think would be the most impactful way to do this? Or if we were going to do this event, you know, which holiday would be the most impactful to celebrate? You know, like I'm just giving random examples, but really thinking through getting them involved in actually helping shape the program, not just because it's important in terms of empowering them and having them feel included, but because they will have insights that you may not have, that you will not necessarily have thought of. Certainly, as the parent of two teenagers of the TikTok generation, my children know things about society and about the world that I am completely unaware of, and I have to rely on them to help me navigate. And I'm sure this is true in other parts of the world as well. So.
Thank you, Vanessa. I see, Anthony, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, everyone from Nigeria. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so I want to completely agree with what Vanessa and Salim earlier said, and I wanted to recommend that you consider the kind of language you speak to the children. Please don't interact with them with technical words. Ensure when you're interacting, whether in your native language or English or any language you'll be using at all, make sure you're communicating with them and they understand what you're saying. Another recommendation I want to give is ensure that the space is safe for them, because children get to be tensed when they're in a space that people are not allowing them, express themselves, in terms of maybe when they have some contributions. And if we have some adults, they were saying, hey, you're just a little child, you can't contribute to this. And since you said the program is basically for children, then you should allow them speak their mind. And also I wanted to suggest that you put some conflict resolution tools in place. For instance, children will always be children, and everyone has their own idea. You might have some people have some perspectives different from others, and then you get to hear something like, no, this is it, that is it. So you have to consider those. And let me just stop here for others to speak. Thank you. And I wish you all the best in your program.
Thank you. I know Isa kind of had a follow-up question to that. That's a good one about hearing thoughts around working with parents of the children's. How do you get their kind of acceptance in addressing any pushback they may have? So any approaches to that? Any of our panelists, moderator who might want to come in?
I can offer some thoughts here. I think there's no one single approach to this, right? I think recognizing that the importance of involving, parents and caregivers, and recognizing in some cases that children themselves are often caregivers and sometimes parents, that these barriers and these cultural norms and attitudes are going to be very different, even within communities that parents have very different views on this and different experiences with this. I think supplementing work with children with actual work dedicated work that's focusing on parents and caregivers has been very important for UNICEF as well, and not just education, but also ensuring that we're helping meet their needs, that help offer them ways of, that they see the work we're doing with children as also helping meet some of their needs and lift burdens on them and helping them and their families, and that they see some benefit. I think the importance as well is in understanding and working with mothers and fathers in different ways, depending on the cultural norms, and grandparents is also very important. And so really taking a kind of an intergenerational approach to the way we do this work is incredibly important. And there are a lot of resources out there, but for me, it's always like the context itself has to be the starting point. You have to really take some time to ask questions about who are these people, where do they live, what society, or what is the societal dynamics, what are the dynamics of this community, and what are all the differences within that and the variation within that we take the time to understand that, because otherwise we can be extremely well intentioned and not only kind of miss the mark in terms of what we're trying to do, but sometimes even cause harm, and obviously that's the last thing we want.
Thank you, Vanessa. Anybody want to add anything else? I know that there were some other good suggestions in the chat. But also, I think, when we're talking about advancing inclusion in a number of ways that you can do this, but anytime you're advancing kind of a whole of society approach, I think a lot of times in the peace building sector and broader sectors, we're so afraid of getting it wrong, right? We're so afraid of making a mistake that we all have the best intentions, and we're really trying to engage new communities and learn from them. And so I don't think that there's any kind of bad question you can ask here, because we're all just learning and growing, and it's okay to step in it sometimes. It's all part of growing. So thank you, Isa, for those really good questions.
I mean, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to really get this very important remarks to add to our design, and we will implement them as much as we can. Thank you.
Any other questions from the floor? Yes, Ishvaluna.
Yeah, I want to tell you that I have also taken part in events in an event where the voices of children and young people were valued, such as the GNRC6 Forum in Abu Dhabi in 2024 at the Wear My Shoes 2024 Context on the Culture of Peace organized by Arigato. And I have participated in initiatives on peace, human rights, the fight against poverty, and the promotion of ethic education for children. And the issues that matter most to me are peace, social cohesion, and communication, as I believe they are essential for living together in harmony and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishfa Luna. And you highlighted the really big conference that took place last year with Arigato International that you both were present at. So for anyone who is doing this work and wants to connect with Arigato International, they are one of the ones leading the charge on this, and they are a member of the network. So happy to make those connections further for those interested. So for now, we are going to change it up and open the breakout rooms where you will have a facilitator and a note taker, where they will ask you 2 rounds of questions, and we'll get to hear from everybody about how they are working with children and some of the some other follow-up questions. So I'm going to now open up the room for you to join, and then once we're done, we will come back to plenary and share. All right, I think we're all back. Welcome back, everybody. I hope your discussions were very fruitful and interesting and that you were able to take something away. As promised, we're now going to do a brief readout so that everyone can kind of get a flavor for what was discussed within each group. So I'm going to first turn to group 1 with Antonia and Tris.
All right, thank you so much, Jessica. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. We had a very insightful session in our room. I don't know if Tris has the discussions put into writing yet. Tris, do you want to confirm that?
Yeah, I have all the notes, so I'm happy to also share some brief highlights from what we have discussed.
Okay, please
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah, so for the first question, how have you been working with children or children's rights advocates within their peace-building work? Our group emphasized that, well, first, identifying that oftentimes events that are organized to amplify youth voices don't have youth in the planning process. Oh, and so therefore, it was emphasized that including youth in the planning process was very crucial in terms of starting these initiatives. And we had Gladys, who was in our group, who mentioned that they have been organizing events that build interpersonal skills, training for young people. It was very important to have extracurricular activities in terms of within their communities to really engage the youth and also to have skills building. And then another member also mentioned that working intergenerationally is also really important. So not just working with children, but involving children in the design of the projects. So the very early process of daily planning, getting their feedback is also really important. And involving them like this also makes them feel like they are part of the process. I think that was also like mentioned throughout the meeting. And then we had another member also mention that they are working to advocate for the promotion and protection of rights of children, but based on policy and advocacy, and mentioning that children cannot be used as agents of war. So how can we engage them otherwise, through those extracurricular activities? And one of the examples like peace clubs, and working with schools and teachers to really amplify peace education within curricular. And then Clotilda was also in our group, and she also mentioned peace clubs was also another emphasis. And with the second question, how can the broader peace building sector be more inclusive of children and children's experiences? We touched on this very briefly, just because the first one, we had a lot of great discussions, but one in particular, or I guess like 2 points, again, involving children in the designing process, the very beginning, and then also Antonia really emphasized investing in more peace education. So integrating these programs into global educational curricular. And again, like mentioned by Vanessa earlier in the meeting, looking at these initiatives from the intersectional approach to really have more of that inclusive basis. Feel free to share anything else, Antonia.
Yes, I think you've been able to capture everything we discussed in our room. Thank you so much for that. So I think it's just okay for us to sit back and learn from others. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 1. Now I will ask Group 2, Istiak and Lucy.
Yes, Lucy, are you there?
Hi,
Yes.
yeah. So I did the note taking for the group. It was a really great conversation. People had a lot of great ideas. We had Isa, Halima, Mark, and Isha. So it was a great spread. People kind of addressed the questions together, so I'm just going to run through. It was a lot of focus around just the best ways to really ensure children are involved and heard throughout the whole process, and kind of some examples of best practice. Halima was talking about Arigato's Children's Solutions Lab, which is really great because it brings together groups of children in their communities around, hopefully I'm describing this to a point, but it's bringing together groups of children in their communities around specific issues so they can share what solutions are most important to them. And there's just consistently throughout processes. So for concept notes and just for development throughout processes, checking in with the children, ensuring ensuring you've checked in with the children on what their challenges are and what works best for them to address them, working with existing organizations rather than reinventing the wheel for more meaningful implementation, working locally with community, forming peace clubs where children can be a part of resolving conflict. We had Mark Awara, who was from the Congregation of Holy Cross, and they run a lot of different programs in their communities to involve children using things that get them interested through sports, prayer, counseling programs, comparative dramas, and role play setups, which was interesting. And these programs were able to get kids really involved and decrease infighting, as well as really engage parents, working on bringing them in on weekends where parents wouldn't be working to increase engagement. Those are a lot of our just kind of key takeaways, but it was a really great conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Group 2. Let's go to Group 3 with Sylvan and Hannah.
Okay, thank you so much. I think for our group, Anna can give the notes which take from our group. Anna, off to you.
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Sylvan. So we spoke about, we went through both questions simultaneously. So starting with Sylvan launched us off and talked a lot about, interestingly, about both the experiences as a child in the DRC in a conflict zone and how that would impact so peace building with children from the experience of a child, which was really interesting, but then also now coming into his advocacy today and how he's working with children. We talked about climate and nature as being a great entry point for children in peace building. That Sylvan also talked interestingly about a program that they were doing in schools that we're seeing some success, but then it was also once he got parents involved in those programs and started doing programming directed towards parents and caregivers, that those results were even more profound. So, thinking about how that Vanessa highlighted during the panel about all the different institutions and structures that are around children, and how addressing all of those at once are really impactful in terms of developing successful programming for children in peace building. Vanessa also was in our group, and she talked about the Columbia Truth Commission and the work that they did in terms of including children's stories, and also just the levels of the additional levels of security and safety and protection that are required in order to collect children's testimonies post-conflict, what that means also in terms of how it shaped the resulting documents from the Truth Commission. To include those stories were obviously very important, but also doing so in a very ethical way, protecting the children as much as possible, while also trying to get their voices and their experiences heard was very important. So I think highlighting that, and then Samson also talked about his work on peace education, and was making some suggestions about how we can make peace education more of a core part of school curriculum. His organization is doing work on peace education in intervals, but because it isn't deeply engraved into the curriculum of the school, it's not something like math or English or literature or something that children are learning every day. These outside organizations have to come in order to get that peace education, but it's not done in a consistent way. So making it a core subject within schools would be a way to make sure that happens. Those are the notes that I had. Sylvan, did I miss anything? Anything else you want to add?
I think you didn't miss anything, but only the thing, maybe what Vanessa said in the chat, which is very important about what she said is freezing head. We are having more program which is focusing on youth than what we have focusing on children. And the really investment should go to children, than as we are more focusing on youth engagement, youth employment. We should also have more focus or effort, investment in children that could save the society. Maybe the only element which we want to add. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, group 3. And then last but not least, the group 4, Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, seems like all of the other groups had a very engaging conversation. So I think we'll start with question 1. So Nikolai mentioned from the work that he's doing with his young organization, is that they're taking an optimistic vision of the future world. So if you believe in the future, if you believe in a positive outcome of the world, you're more likely to act. So they do this also methodology-wise, so strategies of engagement, if you would, by speaking a lingo that's all understood. So creating a common language, a general understanding of like what is inclusivity, what is, go on and so forth. So also a methodology of not telling kids what to do, but listening to them. And then working with freeing imagination. So imagine a hopeful future and then plan how you get there. What does the world look like in 2050? And then figure out next steps in order to reach said goal. And then Steph from an Indigenous organization in Australia spoke about the work that they're doing, mitigating the impact of colonization at the community level for Aboriginal communities in Australia. So they do this through creating a better environment by mitigating the impact of colonization, but then also supporting organizations that work with children or children-led organizations, whether that's gathering funding and supporting their engagement at UN events, or enabling service to ensure that children are loud and visible, or whether it's through good governance if new organizations are being started. Next, we had reimagining new communities. So Salim, very popular in this room already, spoke a little bit more about the work that he's leading. As children are the most affected group in conflict, yet they're almost never involved in the conversations or in solution processes. So they provide a space at the table so children can determine what is good for them and what is bad for them. So do this in multiple ways, one of which is working with schools in Kenya, training teachers in an inclusive environment. So they do this through Peace Labs, which I think is a similar bracket to what somebody else in the group said, which is fantastic that there's multiple pinpoints across the globe. But then also creating a safe environment for children to express themselves, working with religious actors in order to ensure a space where there is less judgment. And then also a safer environment for, like, in terms of play. So creating inclusive play spaces for children, bringing in children with disabilities, and giving children ownership in building programs. So uniting children under the notion that we are all human. Lastly, for question one, Youssef from Somalia really emphasized the vulnerability of children who are intentionally targeted for recruitment as weapons of war or victims of sexual violence. So really brought the conversation to a reminder that there are many children living in very vulnerable situations. And as was mentioned, the main group, they deserve protection and rights and safety. So moving to question two, focused a little bit more on the understanding that we don't have solutions, but we have insights that we can share. So one point that was really highlighted is that it would be amazing to have a network of kids and young folks who are able to connect on a global scale, provide strength to each other, to help fight the fight. And so really globally connecting kids who are doing this work. And then also picking children and going through every stage of engagement. So bringing children along. So for instance, like, don't talk about children's experiences, bring children to share their experiences. So really emphasizing the, like, having a space at the table. And also creating a network to best share practices, lessons learned, how to take initiatives from kids to equip children to transition an idea into action again. One thing that Youssef highlighted was that children of today can be the peace builders of tomorrow or spoilers of peace. So what we do to engage children today affects the future for everyone. And really highlighting the trauma-informed care is essential. And lastly, how do we keep pulling in our young people to ensure we're engaged and their voices are heard? So raising visibility, whether that's social media, whether that's in a forum, many spaces. But for those in room 4, if I missed anything, please speak up. If not, I will hand back to Jessica.
Yeah, I saw Sarah Duvall, I saw your hand was raised. Was there something that you wanted to add? Maybe not. Okay. Well, this actually is the perfect segue, Sarah, and she didn't know I was going to do this to her. However, I think it's actually the perfect moment in correlation to something that you just said. So I want to make sure that I spotlight Halima, who, if everyone has ever heard the UN Multi-Faith Advisory Council, so it is a group of faith-based organizations working to advise an interagency task force on religion and development. There is a new working group starting, the Youth Engagement Working Group, which will also include children from the ages of 15 and 18. And Halima is our new co-chair. So Halima, if you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
So, hi, thank you, Jessica, and for spotlighting me. So, my name is Halima. I'm with the GNRC, Arigato International GNRC, and we had our first meeting for the UN MFAC Youth Engagement Working Group yesterday, and we really look forward to implementing this youth participation within the MFAC and making sure that the youth actually have this platform that they could use, because they have so much to say. I believe as a youth, the one thing I've wanted is having that platform to share what I want and the changes that I need to see in the society. And we hope that this working group can become exactly that. So we look forward to your participation. We'll be reaching out to you some of the activities that we plan, and just we look forward to a fruitful engagement with you. So thank you so much for having me here, and back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Halima. So there's already one of your networks being formed. So luckily we have a direct line into this new network. So thank you, Halima. So thanks to everybody the speakers, our moderator, our facilitators, and note takers for a great discussion today. I'll put in the chat, we do quarterly meetings for the Inclusivity Community of Practice for the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. The next meeting, I'll put the link to sign up for future meetings again in the chat. If you would like to share any resources, we're going to do a readout from this discussion that we'll share. So if you'd like to share any resources from your work, you can email me, and I will also put that in the chat to include. Otherwise, our next and final meeting will be on Friday, October 10th, which is International Mental Health Day, and we will be having our last session on integrating mental health into peace building. So looking forward, hopefully, to seeing you all there. And just thank you again, everybody, for a wonderful discussion.